Welcome to my latest experiment. This is a big one, the one I've been waiting for all my life.
What is it?
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Oh my God.
The cream will rise to the top, oh yeah.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
And there is no one that does it better.
The Guy and Harley podcast, streaming all over your face.
Perhaps that was the most important part.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Pigville on the internet. Peep it. It was my only wish to rise above these jealous coward motherfuckers I despise. Welcome to the Guy and Harley podcast. I'm Guy Pigden.
And I'm Harley Neville. You going to enlighten us with who that was?
Tupac.
Never heard of him.
Ambitions of a rider.
He's One Park's little brother.
Rest in peace. Tupac,
terrible.
legend. So, a lot going on today.
Yep, what do we got?
We got questions. We've got a bit of film school. We're running a film school here on a podcast.
We are. It's the Guy and Harley Film School.
Where basically we help out these people. And I got a message from someone who was actually a zombie extra. And she was a zombie extra on the zombie film, I Survived a Zombie Holocaust. And she was like, well, you know, I really want to do filmmaking. I really want to get into that sort of thing. So, like, what would you recommend? What should I do? And I thought that led into film school versus no film school.
And so was this a female extra?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. 'Cause this is a wee topic in itself, really, is like, you know, women in film and television.
There's less of them.
There's less of them, yeah.
I think it's to do with rejection.
I think it is harder for them.
It's definitely harder for them, but I think it's also to do with, like, guys dealing with rejection and not are less phased by rejection.
You think men are less phased by rejection?
I think so. I think
Is this because we get rejected by women all day, every day?
Well, yes,
It's just part of the course.
Partially, certainly, but even like if you look at jobs and stuff like that, I think that you know, that rejection and that level of rejection, which happens in filmmaking particularly, is, you know, it's hard to deal with for anyone. But guys have a slightly more, you know, could probably mainly because they're stupider, have a sort of a more sort of blasé attitude towards it and take it less personally and less to heart, I think, sometimes. And that creates, and so, you know, if you're dealing with this on a day-to-day, and if, like, a guy ignorantly remains sort of oblivious and is just like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep going, and whereas a woman may take some of those criticisms a little bit more seriously and be like, well, shit, maybe, you know, I should seriously consider giving up.
Right, well, I'm going to sweep aside all of those generalizations you just made, and say that actually it's really just because of prejudice, which still exists, you know, just general sexism in our day-to-day life that we don't even think about. And, you know, I mean,
Well,
I think that they are victims of that.
To be honest, though, I guess that's kind of a given. So that I'm talking on top of that.
Right.
So I'm already saying, yeah, absolutely,
well,
that's the case. But I also think that, I don't know, from a male's perspective, the ability to kind of ignore rejection and disrespect is maybe a slight, they have a higher tolerance.
I can't get on board because they get rejected and disrespected every day with job interviews and all these things. You know, we get rejected in the sexual sense, but they get rejected in, you know, many other ways. Yeah. You know, like, oh, you're a skateboarder, are you? Oh, yeah, right. You know, like, there's just this in all aspects of life. There's this kind of inherent sexism they have to face, and I think that they are very used to rejection.
Moving on.
While I open up this Jim Beam.
So, as a filmmaker, should you go to film school? Should you not go to film school? Is film school worth it? My answer is no. It's not worth it. I haven't been to film school, so obviously I'm talking from that perspective. But I've also worked with a lot of people that did go to film school, and they didn't seem any better off for going to film school, except they had a large debt. I think film school is good for making contacts that you will go into the rest of your life, perhaps collaborations with people that you can sort of rise up the ranks with, and in that respect it's good. But I think that in terms of just a purely practical standpoint, the internet is your film school now. Director's commentaries are your film school. Like, information is so readily available in a way that it wasn't when, I guess, all these great filmmakers went to film school. That sort of that 70s, 80s class of filmmakers that all went to, NYU or whatever it was. And that kind of is over now with the emergence of the internet and stuff. And so I think that, and also, when we made films with people going to film school, what I saw was people making the same mistakes as we were making, because the mistakes you're going to make as a filmmaker are kind of going to be similar. You're going to sort of run into the same things and then improve from them. And it's the trial and error that's where you learn the most. And you can trial and error, especially in this digital age, without the need for what film schools used to provide. So, of course, they provided sort of the theory of it, but they really provided all the gear. At a certain point in time, there was no way that you could just shoot on film, as just some guy on the street and have access to that equipment, and film school was the only place you could do it. Of course, now no one's shooting on film, and it's DSLR cameras and stuff like that. So, there's no need for it anymore.
I think it's all about money, to be honest, because on the one hand, I totally agree that film school kind of a waste of time when you could just get out and start making films, But on the other hand, if you can afford it, I really do feel like maybe we would have advanced technically a lot quicker if we had some sort of formal training, as opposed to just grabbing a camera and going out and kind of figuring it out as we went. So I do feel like there's something to be said for film school. I know that Eli Roth, the director of Cabin Fever, he went to a fancy film school in New York, if I'm not mistaken, and he addressed this topic, and he said that he's heard this argument before, just go out and make movies, but he said the things he learned from his film school made it far more valuable for him to spend that money he would have spent on films and instead spend it all on his education. And then once he had that education, that was how he was able to make Cabin Fever, which went on to be this big international success. But I am still erring on the side of just get out and make films, but I do think that perhaps, the quicker route might be actually a year at film school. Well, maybe not university film, but a practical film course teaching you the technical ins and outs of, which end of a camera to use and so on.
Well, I guess I would add a sort of addendum to that, which is I think you should go out and do it yourself. But there's definitely a tendency to not take filmmaking seriously in terms of, it's oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker, I'm going to be a director. Well, how are you going to be that? Well, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to shoot a film. Okay, filmmaking takes training and learning in the same way that every other profession does. So the idea that you're just going to go out and do that is not really feasible. So when I say, go out and do it yourself, I also read every single book on filmmaking and script writing there ever was, pretty much. And I still do kind of keep up to date with those types of books. And I think that, so it's not just diving in blindly. It's give yourself a base foundation. Read a book about editing. Read a book about camera technique. Read these things and then go and do your thing. But you don't have to do it, at a film school. And I think, especially that's something that kind of leads into script writing, which is again, everyone goes, oh yeah, I've got a great idea for a film. Well, everyone's got a great idea for a film. Or they go, oh yeah, I'm writing a film. It's well, are you writing a film, or are you writing down your ideas in a kind of a haphazard narrative, with zero formatting? Because that's not going to work. And as a filmmaker and as a scriptwriter, you have to present, films as a screenplay. That's a blueprint for your film. And there is a format for that, which you must learn before you just kind of dive in and go, here's my idea, here's my short, here's my feature. If that is all just kind of one long narrative, or, in sort of the wrong format, it's people just will not take you seriously. People will not read it. And so, you have to sort of learn that format first. And that's certainly what I did, is I learned how to write screenplays, and then I wrote screenplays in that format. I didn't just, write how I thought they would work and then just put them out there. And I think that is a very easy thing to do. And I think filmmaking, acting, all those things, they're very easy to just, it's the dream job that you just do and you're just it. And that's the thing. But actually it requires as much training and theory and sort of technique that any very highly skilled job requires. It's just that those things are not openly evident when you sit down and watch a film, and you're not even likely to read a screenplay. You're only going to see the result of that screenplay, but not how that screenplay constructed the film that you're watching. So yeah, I think it's important to sort of make sure that you sort of just do your homework in terms of learning the sort of the form and the formula before you get out and shoot that crazy short or feature or whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, and I do think that you're probably better off just financially. Like I said, it really just depends on your financial situation. If you're quite well off, like Eli Roth's parents are like doctors or lawyers or something like that, so he could afford to drop like $100K on his education. So good for him. But if you're just going to be getting a student loan, which probably you are realistically, and at the end of it you're going to be 20 grand in debt for the year of filmmaking you did,
or maybe
study
more.
you did, or potentially more. You may, it might be better off to take that 20 G's and put it into making a whole bunch of films and just learning that way, because at least that way you've sort of got something to show for it at the end, which is all of these products, all of these films you've just made.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I guess it's also one of those things, do you work well in structure? Because film school gives you structure towards your feature or towards your first shorts.
Also, all the connections. You make a lot of connections at film school with other like-minded individuals, which is obviously very valuable as well, because that was one of the problems we had when we were starting out, was that we didn't know people that could operate a camera, and we didn't know people that knew about sound, and so we had our friends doing it, and that was fine, except for from a technical standpoint it did sort of affect the quality. Whereas if we had an aspiring cameraman on our team that we'd met from school, well, I'm sure that probably would have made our stuff a bit nicer.
Well, in saying that though, looking at those kind of first shorts that are done at film school, technically
they are usually pretty shit.
Pretty about on the same par.
I have been in so many shit student films. Like honestly, like I've been in quite, I don't know, probably like 7 or 8, I guess. 7 or 8 shit student films, and of those 7 or 8, like 2 have been sort of, passable. The best one I did was actually like just within this last year.
Right. So you're never too big. You're never getting too big for your britches, Harley.
Yeah, well, no one will cast me, so I don't have a lot of choices.
Well, I will also say that with regards to writing, particularly in script writing, you can get bogged down. So I say learn the format, right? But then there's all this stuff with Story by Robert McKee. It's very famous, and they talk about the inciting incident, and they talk about the spine of the story, and they talk about sort of like the second act climax and all this stuff. And if you keep kind of like trying to follow all these things, you're like, holy, what the fuck is going on? I mean, I picked up that book at 19, and I just kind of gave up halfway through because it was just so dense. And then I sort of finished off reading it when I was sort of 25. But there's another podcast, it's called Script Notes, which is by John August and Craig Mazin, who are 2 very successful screenwriters in Hollywood. John August did a lot of the Tim Burton films and Charlie's Angels. Craig Mazin did the Hangover sequels and Identity Thief. So these people know what they're talking about, and they say that you got to remember that it's kind of screenwriting is an outlier sort of what happens is only outliers make it in screenwriting. Okay, not everyone who's writing screenplays don't make it. It's a very, very small percentage. So actually, if you kind of follow all these different rules and like Sid Field's screenplay and Robert McKee's story and all this stuff, what you end up is doing a middle of the road kind of script which adheres to all these different, rules and principles, which kind of makes your script, like just kind of traditional. But actually, the scripts that get noticed are kind of polarizing to some degree. So instead, when someone picks up a script, no one universally loves a good script. Some people go, this is a great script, this is fantastic. And then some people go, I fucking hated this script. But all these scripts that you kind of churn out, if you're following all these principles, are just kind of average. And they're safe. And they don't provoke any kind of reaction like that because they're so, rigid. And so, you have to be wary of that. Like, you got to write with that original voice. You've got to, if you want to sort of deviate from some of the ideas that's presented, I think the only thing that is important in screenwriting is a beginning, middle, and an end. Not necessarily in that order. But I just think that's all you got to have. And whatever else you do within that, as long as you stick roughly to the screenplay formula in terms of just the format of it, how people will read it, you'll be fine. Yes.
To get away from the filmmaking for a second, because this is a very multi-tiered podcast.
Yeah.
To get away, Genie in a Bottle.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Well, after our discussion, this is a follow-up to last week's episode.
We have discussed this before. So the Genie in the Bottle is basically a vagina in a can. Yeah. It's kind of like a Pringles can with a vagina inside it. You pop the top off and you go at it. Now, we spoke about this in last week's podcast, but there's been some developments.
There's been some updates.
Guy stumbled upon a 70% off sale at Peaches and Cream. These are normally like $20.
Yeah.
They were like $7.
So think about this, man. 70% off. It was already good value for money.
It was... It was already way cheaper than a date. $20, that's like 2 drinks.
Exactly. And
half a dinner.
And yet here so you this is what's funny though. It makes sense that I got.
Well, wait, how did Guy why did you end up at Peaches and Cream? Did you just drive past, you saw the 70% off sale, or did you make a concerted effort to go to Peaches and Cream after our conversation?
Honestly, I'd had that conversation, but it had already been on my mind.
Yeah.
Because the last Indy in the bottle had wore out long ago.
Yeah.
Her powers had had diminished.
Yeah. She was just a can full of cum.
So I was like, I'm single. I'm probably going to be single for a long time. You know what? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to get out there and treat myself. I don't have much money, but shit. I'm going to spend it where it counts. So I headed off on down to Peaches and Cream, and lo and behold, 70% off. So
this sale's going right now, people. Right now, it's still going.
So you can just, as you're probably in your car right now, divert
to K Road. Go to K Road and head to Peaches and Cream.
You do a full Yui, and you're like speeding. That's what I imagine's happening right now. So anyway, 70% off. So I picked myself up too.
Yeah.
But then here's the rub.
So to speak.
Genie in the Bottle rub. I told you about this. And suddenly you were down there with fucking bells on.
So I heard about the 70% off sale, right?
Like, what? 70%?
Shit. No, so 70% off. But what happened was I was walking past with my girlfriend, with young Angie, and we were just walking along K Road, and I saw the big sign, 70% off, and I was like, oh, that's right. so I dragged her in, and she was not hugely keen to go in there. Like, not we've been in there before, but like, I don't know. She was like, what is going on?
What is wrong with you?
Why are you buying fake vaginas? I'm right here.
Yeah. You have a real vagina, Harley. Why do you need a fake one?
And to make matters worse, I actually forgot my EFTPOS card. Which means she had to buy them. So she bought me 2.
So she's like, I'll have 2 fake vaginas, please, for my boyfriend.
Who's standing right here.
Please do not make any assumptions about my vagina based on this.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what happened there.
But why did you do that? Was it just the deal? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, I mean, I guess it was the deal. Also, you spice things up a little bit. A few toys in the bedroom can never hurt, can they?
When you're alone.
Well, no. Also, Angie works a lot.
Sure.
What am I going to do for all those long hours? My job's very casual, very easy. I work in TV production, which basically means I work like not the full 40.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot of time on my hands. So had to
invest.
Now I want to give you I want to sort of point out a hypothetical of what you could do with this genie in a bottle. It's a tip for this can, but I want to say it's purely hypothetical, and I've never done this.
Right.
Now the thing is, essentially it's a can, right, that you put your penis in it and basically have a wank into it and imagine that it's a vagina. Okay, but you're still kind of just having a wank. You're using your hand. Now what you need is a way to have sex with that hands free.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Now I'm just saying, if you wanted to, if you were so inclined,
hypothetical,
you could place it in between the base of your mattress and the mattress on your bed, essentially leaving it there in what I will dub doggy position. So just saying, hypothetical.
So it's
tips.
Like, if you want to escalate your genie in a bottle use to the next level, hands free, there you go.
Yeah, you can start fucking your bed.
I really think
fuck a bed.
I really think they should be paying us for all this endorsement.
This promotion. Yeah, we should send this to them.
I think we will. I think we'll definitely do that.
Yeah. Now, one last thing is, it's kind of a gel sort of in there, so it does wear out. It wears out, gets all beat up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of a gel. I don't know if we really specified that. So yeah, you can't leave it forever. It eventually kind of.
It has a definitive expiry date.
Yeah, they biodegrade. Good for the environment, apart from the plastic around the outside.
Yeah.
That's not good for the environment.
So what else we got?
Well, we had a party. We had a party last week, which we have not discussed.
That's true.
We had, for the first time in about 2 years, we had the Pigville party. And got along all the movers and shakers that we know, or about a third of the movers and shakers that we know.
Right.
And yeah, it was overall, I think, a pretty good night. Pretty bit of a success.
It was good to see a lot of people there. Lots of cool people showed up that I hadn't talked to in a while, and it's just very nice to. I think it's nice to chat with interesting people.
My idea was that we could perhaps get together a whole bunch of kind of filmmakery sort of people and sort of have an unofficial kind of networking party, kind of make it a thing where people meet other filmmakers and actors and so forth when they come to Pigville parties, and make it a bit of a a networking hotspot. That was kind of my hope for it.
Yeah. Well, I think that was successful.
Yeah, I think you might be right. It was definitely probably our first grown up party, I think, because it was like it was not very loose really. Someone broke our glass table.
Yep.
Someone who shall remain nameless smashed our glass table.
Celeste.
It's going to cost about $80 to fix that, apparently. But yeah, other than that.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And unfortunately, my era, I was like, I'm going to be responsible. Just stick to the gins, G&Ts.
Burst into tears.
I don't
got emotional.
That can happen, but didn't happen. But what did happen is then I went out afterwards. So after the party is the after party. And I went out to town and drunk way too much. And there was tequila shots and beers. And it all just got silly. From there, it all got silly. Mm-hmm. And I threw up the next day, which I very rarely do. So I must have been really, really ill.
Mm-hmm. Always puts a bit of a... leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth when you ruin the night by overindulging at the end. Yeah. What's next on the agenda?
I was chatting with Jared Murray today, who we were doing a DCP test of the zombie film.
Yeah, you're going to have to explain to the listeners what a DCP is.
It's a digital cinema print, which is basically now that film stock is no more. Most projectors are digital as well, and so basically you just feed this into this server and it plays your film. but you have to create a certain thing because a film is still run by a projector. So the images can't be the same as the images you created when you were shooting it because they're not backlit, you know? So you're essentially creating what is going to be seen in the cinemas. And we were having a chat about editing, and I stumbled across this new principle because editing, again, is one of the key things that is often overlooked at the beginning of people's filmmaking sort of experience, and something that takes a very long time to master. But I think that, you know, if you're editing, there's this principle, the principle of 3, right?
Right.
Now,
I'm with you.
If something doesn't work, you have 3 options in your edit. Reorder the sequence to get it to make more sense. So that's one. Remove, which is whatever's not working, whether it's a kind of a awkward, stilted performance, kind of a line that doesn't quite work, or a joke that doesn't quite work, or just something that just doesn't quite hit.
Get that sumbitch out of there.
Take it away. Can't keep it in. And then the third one, reshoot.
Yep.
So if you think you've fucked up a scene dramatically, which happens all the time, I might add, or maybe that's just us, but, you know, generally you will get things wrong, then just think, it's like, how hard would it be to shoot the things that I need? And I think that if you apply that principle as you're editing, you'll be a lot better because, you know, we all get very attached to the story, right?
Yeah.
And what we shot on the day.
Yeah, because you look at it and you see all the effort you put into it as opposed to the final product. You see the catering you organised, and the camera you hired that day, and the cool actor that you managed to convince to perform. And
even the intention of it, you see the intention of the scene, like what you wanted to achieve in your head as opposed to what you actually got. And so what you do, particularly when you're starting out, is you're just inclined to go, well, look, that doesn't really work, but it's probably fine. It's probably fine, or heaps of films have little bits like that in them. I think they're the two things that you kind of go back to.
The old justifications for keeping it.
Yeah, but you just can't. You got to let it go, man. You just got to let it go. So think about that if you're cutting anything. Don't be afraid to use the rule of 3.
Yep.
Now, another fan topic.
What was that?
The untold legend of Pigville.
Right, yeah.
How did we come together? How did we start things off? How did it all happen?
Now, I heard that was from Christian Damstead. His question was to give us the untold legend of Pigville. How did it all begin? So, I mean, it started in high school.
Yep.
13 when we met each other.
Yep.
A guy didn't like me.
Hated me. Hated Harley. Now, this is how it happened, right? There was a core group of people. It was me, Puggy Ranum, Pajumas, and some other guy. That's how well I remember my friends. Andrew Lee.
Right, yeah.
And maybe a couple other people that we sort of kicked around with, right? And then, just out of the blue, this guy moves over from Australia.
That was me.
Short. Very short.
Guy likes to judge people on their physical appearance.
Pimply.
I was not particularly pimply.
Pimply forehead.
Sometimes.
But really what irked me, 2 things irked me. One, a horrible Australian accent, which you can still do to perfection now, as evidenced by your most recent audition with an Australian accent.
Yeah, and the 2 commercials I've ever had in my entire life, one of them was with an Australian accent.
Yeah. So you can still turn it on whenever you want to infuriate and want to make people stab you in the face. So had this horrible Australian accent. Also wore shorts. At school. The school uniform, you could either wear pants or shorts, right? And no motherfucker in his right mind would wear shorts. It was just not done. It was not cool. It was just not the thing, you know? And anyone that did was due for some paying out. and here's this guy rolling up from Australia with his fucking accent and his fucking short shorts, gimping about the place and inserting himself into my friend circle, my circle of friends, just inserted himself like he was just one of the fucking gang, like he'd always just been there. And I was like, hang on a fucking minute, who the fuck is this guy? Who the fuck is this little turd with his short shorts? And why the fuck does he think he can just fucking insert himself into the friend circle, the circle of trust? But that's exactly what you did. And, you know, so to begin with, it was this sort of low, just barely tolerable tolerance of this person. And I was like, why the fuck is this guy here? Harley is a bit of a dick. Why are we hanging out with him? Why did we even let him talk to us? Why don't we just, like, go somewhere else when he comes over? You know, like, what is he doing?
Why do we bully him?
And then slowly it was just kind of like, he's actually an all right guy. He's actually not that bad a guy. Yes, he's got shorts. Yes, he has his accent, but he's actually not a bad dude. He's quite smart. He's quite funny from time to time, and is actually all right. And then from that, it was like, actually, he's pretty cool. We have kind of a fair bit in common, and we like talking about girls. We have a lot in common. We want to sleep with girls, but we can't sleep with girls. And we don't know what sleeping with girls will really entail. It will be difficult. It will be stressful. Let's talk about
Let's prop each other up.
Let's talk about it on the phone for 2 hours, saying how we don't know what the fuck we're doing to each other and feel better because of it. And so, you know, the friendship just grew from there, and then we started and then sort of, you know, that continued on, and we actually slept with some girls.
Not together.
And that was cool, and we talked about that. And, you know, we were like, okay, wow, this is new. I guess this is a thing we're going to do now.
Whenever we can.
And, you know, we sort of, I guess it turned from, you know, that to relationship woes, and like, she don't let me do this, and or she hates this about me, and, you know, and all this sort of thing. And it kind of went from there. And then we also started, you know, obviously we're hanging out all the time. And I got an idea that we're going to shoot a film.
In seventh form.
Inspired by Dawson's Creek.
Inspired by Dawson's Creek. Guy being a big fan of Dawson's Creek. You know, in which the protagonist Dawson is an aspiring filmmaker at high school.
Loves Spielberg and all that stuff, which I did.
Had a bunch of nerdy shit.
Had posters up on his wall, much like I did. It was just like, if, you know, had a girl...
But you didn't have Dawson's Creek... I mean, you didn't have Spielberg... posters and so on before Dawson's Creek, right? Like, Dawson's Creek was what really kicked it off for you.
I did.
The filmmaking concept.
I didn't have Spielberg posters, but I did have Star Wars posters.
Right.
So the Star Wars...
Yeah, but being a fan of Star Wars as a viewer is not the same as wanting to be a filmmaker. Like, Dawson's Creek is what started Pigville.
Genesis.
Is that what you're telling me?
I'm telling you, Dawson's Creek... Well, because I always liked writing. I'd always really been a fan of writing. And if I even think about it, you know, what I was doing when I was in sort of primary school is I was watching like Indiana Jones, and then I was kind of writing Indiana Jones style adventures, except obviously I'd be the hero. And so you can sort of trace that idea, that sort of desire to be a storyteller from back then, but it all crystallized with Dawson's Creek.
Because Dawson got to hook up with Joey, and Katie Holmes. Guy was a big fan of Katie Holmes.
Hot as shit
in those days. Nick as well, our other good friend, who was sort of, one of the guys that helped form Pigville in the very beginning.
All we were doing was coming over Joey.
Yeah, they were just wanking about Joey all day. And, meanwhile, honestly, I was like, guys, this is really shit.
This is really sad, guys.
This is really a terrible show, and not cool to like at all. I was not on board.
And, you know, all we were talking about is...
They were like, Joey, don't overanalyze this.
And also, you know, they had the whole Pacey hooked up with his teacher. And we're like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we hooked up with a hot teacher?
Yeah. And then Guy hooked up with Mrs. Walsh.
Rest in peace, Mrs. Walsh.
The fat old lady who's dead, rest in peace.
Recently passed away, and I did not actually hook up with. But thank you for contributing that. So anyway, you know, but like, I guess it was just the permission. It was like watching Dawson's Creek, gave me the permission to be like, because before then it seemed like, it's so far away, you know, like Hollywood is so far away. The idea of making films is so, because, you know, even Peter Jackson, it was just this, like, you know, he hadn't done Lord of the Rings or anything like that.
No.
And so it just seemed like a bit of a pipe dream. And then to see this guy who wanted to make films, who was my age, who was into the same stuff as me, who had a hot neighbor down the road, like, it all just made sense. It was just like, oh, well, look, if this is an okay thing for him to like, then it's okay for me to believe that I can do it too.
If it works for Dawson, it works for Pigville. And so then, one day after school, because we had detention together, after school detention, which I don't remember what it was for, but I'm confident that it was a daring political stunt. And we had detention together where we had to stay for like an hour afterwards. And so we were walking, after school, we walked to town, which meant we had to walk through this creepy old graveyard, the Opo graveyard. And normally there's heaps of people around at the same time. You know, you'll finish school at the same time, everyone walks in. But on this occasion, because we were an hour late, we were walking by ourselves, and it was, you know, deserted and deathly silent, and then that was when Guy said, this would be a cool place to shoot a movie, a zombie film. And that was really that was when the first Pigville production was born. Now, I wasn't on board immediately. It's not that I was, actually, no, I was not against shooting it. I just didn't think the idea was that great of like a zombie film in a graveyard. You know, it seemed a bit cliche to me.
That wasn't a great idea. That was not a great idea. And none of my ideas were back then in terms of like the content of what we're filming, because they were basically, you know, whatever I was thinking of filming was just a knockoff of things that I really liked. You know, like I did another one which was about a computer that started talking to me. I can't even remember how it ended. I just went crazy and I ran away with the computer.
He drives away with the computer at the end.
How
can you not remember that?
Well, because it was terrible.
He puts the computer in the car and he drives away at the end. That's right,
and he's talking to it.
He's talking to the computer, but the computer's off, I think.
And it was basically...
It was all on his head.
The idea was, you know, how 2001, another, you know, big influence. A bit later on, Flat Hunting, about a guy who was driven crazy by his flatmate, which actually is not that bad an idea.
Yeah.
But it was just a blatant rip-off of The Shining.
Right.
You know? In every regard.
Yeah, well, except for the main character, the main bad guy, the main antagonist was was crazy from the start, kind of.
Yeah, a little
whereas
bit.
In The Shining, you know, he kind of goes kind of crazy.
I don't know, I thought they're about even.
Yeah, right. And so basically that's where it began, high school, and it continued on, and you know, just one production led to another, and you know, each one got slightly better, and you know, we learnt different things and continued to develop, and then, you know, here we are 14 or so years later, podcasting and living together and
living the dream.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Guy for something like 17 years now. It all works out. It's ridiculous. It's more than half my life. And I've been living with him for most of it. You know what? Soon
we're going to get to that point where we live with each other longer than we've lived with our parents.
Yes, that soon is what's going to happen. Soon, because we both moved out of home when we were 17 to start flatting together in Dunedin, and we started flatting in this shitty shithole, and you know, I mean, 17, not that long, you know. So when we're 34. If we're still living together, we would have been living together for longer than we lived with our parents.
Well, not quite, because I did move back.
Moved back for a while,
but I think it's almost time to wrap it up.
Yeah, sadly it is. We're an hour 4 into this podcast. Now, we still have one very important segment left, the Tweeter segment.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we are going to head down to... Well, there's 2 things that we need to discuss. One... We're probably going to go to Revelry tonight, which is not the same night that you're listening to this, but Revelry is a very cool bar.
Yep.
On Ponsonby Road.
Yep, on the corner.
And we often lurk around there. So you know, just give that business a wee plug, because they treat us great. And
very good to us.
We really like it there.
Yep.
And 2, Need for Weed. Now, this is a movie on YouTube shot by... Our friend Trevor Lewis Jr., who is a filmmaker from England, and basically he's in a competition right now to win $1,000 Australian to go towards his next production. And what he needs to do to win is he needs to share his YouTube link as many times as possible. So he gets 10 points per share, and or 1 point per like. So basically, what I'm saying is, if you could please go to the Pigville Productions page, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see Need for Weed, a film, and all you have to do is click share on that, and he will get 10 points. And he's actually really close. Like, he's got something like 316 points last time I checked, and the winner, the leader, has like something like 360 points. So he's about 5 shares behind, roughly. So he's actually reasonably close to becoming coming first. So if you could give that a watch and give it a share, well, that'd be much appreciated.
Yes, please do. And if you want a shout out for something that you're doing,
let us know, man. Let us know. Well, see, Trevor Lewis Jr., he admins the Pigville page. He does. He makes films under the name Hag Films, and he admins the page alongside me. So we really owe him this plug, because he really does do some great work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Reboots. Shane Simpson asked, when is the right time to do a reboot? Examples of good and bad. The answer to that question is quite complicated. I think that there's very rarely a good time.
Yeah, all these friggin' superhero movies, they're all reboots of, previous things. Like, they rebooted Spider-Man, 2 years after Spider-Man came out.
Yeah.
Well, and that just annoyed me. I was like, it was shit the first time, and then they remade it just as shit, and then it wasn't even ready. It's not like, you need to wait 20 years before you reboot something.
Well, I'd throw sequels into this as well, as part of an ongoing issue, which has become now, over the last 10 years, a serious problem.
Yeah, which is the no original content is being made.
Yeah, and just the idea that there's a built-in audience for something. Okay, so there's a built-in audience for something, so we want to capitalize on that. So, it's a an audience for Spider-Man, so reboot Spider-Man, or there's there's this classic film, everyone loves this classic film, let's remake it. And I think the biggest problem, well, there's a few problems with that. I think the best time to do a reboot or a remake, it's very simple. There's only one time you should do it, which is when you're rebooting or remaking a bad film. And it's a bad film that could have been good, right? But for something. But because it's dated and the special effects are terrible, and so it's unwatchable to today's eyes. It was a great idea. It had a great concept, but it just, for whatever reason, it didn't all come together, it didn't work. And that's what Hollywood used to do. If you look at because, this is not a new thing, this was kind of in vogue in the sort of 1930s and 40s. But what they were remaking is they were kind of making B films A films, or they were making an adaptation of a novel, and it didn't quite work the first time, they redid it. And so, but they would never touch Gone with the Wind or Casablanca. They would never ever consider redoing those. Whereas had they been made in this era, we probably would have seen those. And I think that so there is a time for it. I mean, I think one of the best examples is John Carpenter's The Thing, which I mentioned is one of my favorite horror films. That is a remake of another film called The Thing, which came out in the sort of 1950s and was not at all scary or good in the 1980s audience, and he redid that. Now, subsequently, there's been another Thing which has remade John Carpenter's The Thing, and it was fucking terrible. And because you were remaking a classic of something and just doing it slightly worse. And that's basically what happens.
Yeah, well, the thing is about that whole built-in audience and all that stuff is we can't blame the production companies. We can't blame them because they're just out to make a buck, they've got a business to run. We can't blame them. It's you, dear listener, that we need to blame because you are the one who's going and watching Spider-Man, the reboot,
That's true.
It's you that's going and seeing the 4 sequels to not Need for Speed. What's that other one? Gone in 60 Seconds.
Fast and Furious.
That's the one. Yeah, whatever. all those shitty car movies. And it's you who is lowering the general quality of films by going and seeing these shit films. If we all refused collectively to go to these types of films, there would be no choice but to make good, original, interesting content, and the money would flow. Then people would be looking for those ideas and developing them, and the industry would be in a golden period.
That's right.
Instead, we're in this
not golden period.
Yeah, it's more of a brown period.
Well, yeah. Or golden shower period.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, dear listener, is please don't ever go and see any sort of shitty sequels or reboots.
Well, also, I think, this leads to something else, which is kind of sequels to things 20 years later.
Yeah.
And this is what I sort of had a thought about, because basically, a couple of things have come up. They're doing a Blade Runner sequel.
Yeah.
Now, Blade Runner, classic science fiction, first one made in the 1980s. Now they're doing a sequel to that. But
with Harrison Ford, right?
With Harrison Ford,
yeah. So that's a promising sign.
It is a promising sign, but there's a fundamental issue.
Although, not if Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull is anything to be...
I'll get to that.
All right.
But there's a fundamental issue with the idea of doing a sequel to Blade Runner. Is one of the core principles of Blade Runner is... You don't know whether he himself, Harrison Ford, is a replicant or not, but it strongly suggests that he is, and it strongly suggests that he himself only has a couple of years to live. Right. So the ambiguity of that idea is what made that film so great, right? Now you come along 30 years later, obviously...
He wasn't.
Exactly.
They've answered the question. He wasn't.
Question, and in doing so completely destroyed... one of the great things about the original. And this is the same kind of thing that happened to a lesser degree in Alien 3, where, basically Ripley wakes up and everyone's fucking dead. Who she saved in 2, and she spent the second half of 2 saving, and it was meant everything to save this little girl, and then Alien 3, well, she's dead.
That's the beginning. But did you hear that they're making the new one, right?
Yes.
And that it's being set between 2 and 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Which is awesome.
Which is what I said on Facebook before it was announced that was his intention. I said it would be great if they just forgot 3 and 4 and just
continued.
Went from 2. But I think that's the problem with these sort of sequels, and even Star Wars. I'm worried about Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about Star Wars because I'm really looking forward to Star Wars.
I'm worried because Disney own it.
Well, on the one hand, I'm really looking forward to Star Wars. On the other hand, what happens when you revisit these characters 30 years later is they become mortal. They lose their timelessness. So, when at the end of the Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker was the last of the Jedis. He'd been through all this shit. He'd had to kill his dad. He'd basically brought balance to the Force, whatever. And that's where his story ends. And wherever I want to imagine him going is where he goes. But I guess his journey from boy to a man, he's taken that journey. I've taken that journey with him, and we can go out into the world, and do whatever we want and be whatever we want. But if you come back to that story 30 years later, and he's this old guy, which he is, he's this old guy that's now this Obi-Wan Kenobi figure, like in the original Star Wars, which he will be, then suddenly you've completely shattered that. You've shattered that idea, like a good book where these characters go forever on. It doesn't matter. That's in your mind. That's for you. That's your personal thing. And now you've taken that away and you've said, well, no, he's here. And maybe he's going to get killed. There's a rumor that Han Solo's going to get killed in these new ones because Harrison Ford wanted to be killed in Return of the Jedi, so now they'll kill him in this one and cap him off. But I don't want I don't want Han Solo to die.
Yeah,
I want him to continue on being this crazy space pirate. And do I want to see old Han Solo with a nagging wife, Princess Leia, who will be nagging his fucking ass? You can better believe it.
Oh, they'll be making all sorts of crap jokes out of that.
And do you really want to see that? Isn't it better to leave him in where he was, as someone that had grown up and learnt to believe in something, believe in this idea of, the rebels opposing the Empire. That's a great place to leave that character. And so what they are now doing with all these sequels and stuff is they're kind of shattering that special, I guess, timelessness of film in a way. And it's also now you just don't even know, if we shoot a film now, we're going to come back to it in 20 or 30 years and kind of crap all over it. Because also, look, Indiana Jones had
has it been done well ever?
Well, the thing is, it's a new phenomenon. They never used to do this. They never used to return to characters so far, so much later. Part of that was because the fucking actors died.
Yeah.
Because they were hard-living, alcoholics, who had a lot shorter life expectancy. But also part of it was just because it was just like, no, this is the film, this is that story, and now we'll go and think of new ones. But, in this sort of idea of like, Star Wars, the next Star Wars is going to make a lot of money. And, you can say what you like about the prequels, but they didn't fuck with that. They didn't fuck with Luke Skywalker or Han Solo or anything that you held, like that you wanted to take forward was still forward because they were going back to the past. And that was almost made more sense.
Well, I really enjoyed finding out Anakin's backstory. That was what I really enjoyed of those three films was sort of mainly Anakin's storyline and his development from this sweet boy to to Darth Vader, the most badass dude in the galaxy. So I'm a
person and my name is Anakin.
So I enjoyed that. I took away all of that from that. It was good, but the rest was a bit shit.
Yeah, and I think just messing with the timelessness of it. And, we've seen it go wrong, most specifically with who you mentioned, old Indy 4.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, is like, I was fully on board for Indiana Jones 4.
So was I.
I was like, and to be honest, I think there's still a good story there. And I actually think that is one of the few characters that would have benefited from, like, exploring getting older. Like, what happens when a hero kind of gets past the point where he can be that young dashing dude and he's got to pass the torch to his son, or he's coming up against his son in a kind of just a rival where it's like, hey, I've done all this shit but you haven't done it and I see all this brashness in you. That dynamic was fine. It was just the whole execution was awful, and nuke the fridge and flying monkeys and
jumping the shark and all the rest of it
and CG all over the place.
The CG was just, that's what really got me. It was just terrible. And what about, there's this one bit or two bits that really bother me. They're driving in a car and there's all these like bugs chasing them, or no, they crash into it. Some people crash into a bug hill and get eaten.
Ants, killer ants.
And like they're driving along and fighting, right? And at one point, one guy throws out the German driver, and then it's like, who's driving? There's no one driving. And then later on, the German driver's just like back, and he's just driving. And while this guy's driving on the back, like Harrison Ford and someone's having a fight.
Shia LaBeouf is having a fight.
Okay. And then what happens is he gets kicked off. He falls off. Shia LaBeouf falls off and then swings like Tarzan at the speed of a car. He swings like Tarzan to catch up with a speeding vehicle, and then he lands on the back again. It's utterly preposterous.
Well, look, I mean, lots of preposterous things happen in the other Indiana Joneses, but it just never, they always made some, like...
Well, you know what it was? It was because they had the physical stunts, so you saw it really happening. So you're like, okay, I'm on board. But when you see a CGI Shia LaBeouf swinging through some CGI vines and landing on a CGI car
with a bunch of monkeys,
you don't give a big CGI shit.
Letting out a Tarzan, a CGI Tarzan cry,
an ADR. It was just dumb.
And that's the thing, and I think, that's, like, if anything, signifies the folly of this new strategy that everyone's employing.
Which is
film.
Too much CGI.
Well, it's returning to a film when the filmmakers aren't able to do the same thing that they did. And also think that, like...
Well, also, all those aliens as well. That the aliens at the end, when it turned out to be aliens, it was like, okay, well, now you've getting silly again, because, Indiana Jones was kind of believable, it was kind of feasible.
Well, the Cup of Christ?
Well, yeah, I'm on board with that.
The
mystical
Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah, I was all right. These mystical artifacts. Who knows? Use your imagination about the past, and but then just aliens, and I don't know. It's just a bit of a cop out.
Well, yeah. So I do think that we have to stop it, because, like, let's just let movies be movies. If you're gonna do 3 in a row, that's great. Leave it at that. If you're gonna make some of the greatest films of all time, I'm talking about the Star Wars trilogy, the first ones, or the Indiana Jones trilogy, just, I guess you got to walk away, but we all have a desire to keep going, because we all do want to see, if you create something beloved, you want to continue to be beloved.
Guy, there's only one thing for you to do, and that is for you to put your money where your mouth is and refuse to see those films, or to pirate them.
Imagine that if I didn't see the new Star Wars.
You'd have to. Based on your own critique of the industry, you now have to refuse to see them.
No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the very first screening, or the first night. I'm going to pay a little bit of extra money to probably see it in IMAX or 3D. And then at the end of it, a little part of me will be dead.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Now, we've spoken a little bit about Genie in the Bottle. I also want to mention Tinder. Yeah. Now, I mentioned...
From fake vaginas to real vaginas.
Yeah. Or...
online vaginas.
Cyber vaginas. So basically, I talked a little bit about Tinder putting their price up ages. It's disgusting. We're all very offended. Copy. That all stands. Well, this happened to me, and I've uncovered a Tinder conspiracy.
Okay.
Now, I don't really go on Tinder. I've got my profile, but I don't really go on it. Right?
Have any of you listeners checked him out yet and swiped him, or whichever way you're supposed to swipe him for good?
Apparently not, which is, I'm getting to my point. Now, it's sometimes, it's weeks if I ever go on it to not really participate, right? And this has happened twice, is I've got a notification saying that someone has Tindered me, right? Mm-hmm. But I go on it, no one's Tindered me.
Yeah.
Now, what's happening is that for Tinder to work is it's looking for people in your area that have been online.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's a way of tricking you to get on there.
So it's tricking me to log on so then it can say that I've been on recently.
Yeah.
So it basically, Tinder sends you bogus notifications to get you to go onto Tinder so it can keep perpetuating its Tinderness.
Well, to be fair... that's what you need, though. You need to have been online recently so that the people can right swipe you. So you need to participate better.
Yeah, but
Tinder's just helping you.
Yeah, but Tinder can't be given that fake that false hope, shall we say? But certainly they you can't just be saying, oh, you have a message from someone. Oh, just kidding. We just wanted you to go online. We're just fucking goofing. We just want you to go online because that's how our shit works. And I'm taking the choice away from you to not be participating in Tinder.
Well, at least they're not telling you that someone sent you a message and then trying to charge you to read the message, because that's what I remember NZ Dating. I tried that like years ago now, and I was not very active, but I was on there, and it kept on saying, "Oh, you've received a message from such and such," and I think I genuinely had received a message from such and such.
Right.
But the thing is, I couldn't read the message or send them a message without signing up for the pro account kind of thing. So it was just a big cock tease.
Well, all I'm saying is just fucking watch it, Tinder. First this ageism thing, now fake notifications. You're heading for an app delete.
Well,
you're cruising, man.
You need to use it. You need to use it, my friend. Trust me. I mean, you're fucking a vagina in a can. You need to use it. You need to get out there, buddy.
Hey, look, I've accepted my life. I've made peace with it. I literally made this mental note in my head. I was like, you know what? I'm probably not going to date anyone for the first half this year. The first half of this year is out.
Well, that's exactly when it happens, when you say it won't.
Oh, well, I've said it won't because I was literally like, I've got so much stuff to do with Older. I've still got shit to do for the zombie film. We're in March now. But just realistically speaking, so I literally acknowledge, I was like, I'm not going to have any dates. I'm not going to have any sex. I'm just going to do me. I'm just going to be working on my shit, and that's that. And
what about going and seeing a professional?
It's never even crossed my mind.
Not crossed your mind?
Not once.
I feel like it's a bit. The prices are a bit.
Yes.
Put it out of the reach of the average man.
Well, look, I mean, I think if you're going to go, I just think it's too artificial.
Unlike a vagina in a can. That's totally cool.
Hey, look, man, vagina in a can you can make no judgment calls about. And it will make no judgment calls about you. Whereas, you just have to wonder about people's circumstances. You have to wonder why they're doing it. You have to... Because it's not because they love sex.
No, no, but I think that in
sure,
New
it's
Zealand,
to make a living, but
I think that in New Zealand it's not even that. I think a lot of the time in New Zealand, like maybe overseas, you've got people who are kind of forced into prostitution due to their circumstances. I feel like a lot of people in New Zealand, it's because they like money.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was walking down Vincent Street a wee while ago, and there's one on there called 133 Vincent, and outside was sitting this girl, and she was she looked happy enough, and she was wearing these brand new, real expensive looking high top basketball boots, and I was looking at her and I was thinking well, how did you pay for those? And it's just like, well, you had sex to pay for those, and it's like, that's not baby formula or something like that. That's it's not what you're spending. You're not spending your money on the crucial stuff. You're doing that because you want to, and you want the things that you're going to buy with it.
Capitalism.
Yeah, so that's all right. Let them do what they want.
Live and let live.
Live and let live.
Shane Simpson also had another question, talking about Star Wars, my beloved Star Wars.
Yeah, back to the wars.
Now he said, now we talked a little bit about television, and having limited budgets means that on television people kind of sit around in rooms talking.
Yeah, in a previous episode, the idea being that they have to reuse the same sets again and again and again, to get their maximum sort of money out of it. So they set a lot of things in the same room and just have a lot of talking and so on. This is in, TV series as opposed to movies.
And Shane Simpson pointed out that in the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, all they seem to do is fucking sit around talking, looking out on vistas, and he said, is this too much green screen? What's going on with this soap drama pacing? The answer is yes, partially it is green screen, because what happens when you shoot on green screen is it's much, much more difficult to have the camera moving. So if you keep the camera locked off and static, it's very easy to key in your background, whatever that is. But if the camera is moving,
Kashyyyk.
It's there we go.
Kashyyyk or something like that.
The Wookiee's home planet.
The Wookiee's home planet of Kashyyyk.
So essentially, as soon as you start moving the camera, it does start costing a shitload more, and it's just very difficult. And especially at the time when the prequels are made, it was just a much more difficult thing. But, George Lucas had lost his touch by that stage, and so, there should have been a bit more urgency to those Jedis standing and talking. They should have been fucking running about the place. Kids are getting killed, place has been overthrown by Siths, and they're just kind of strolling about the place. Look, it was an issue, Shane. It was a real issue. I can't defend it, but that's probably why. Over-reliance on green screen. Talking about the Star Wars prequels,
yes,
a little bit earlier, Shane Simpson had another question.
He did. He said, what are your secret shame shows / movies? What are your secret shame shows or movies? He was always embarrassingly partial to Power Rangers. How about us?
What were your secret shame shows?
Well, I'm not really much of a TV watcher.
You're not much of a TV or movie watcher.
I'm not really much of a TV or movie watcher. Yeah. So, but I mean, I don't know if this even counts. I don't think it does. I think it's cool. But Gilligan's Island.
Really?
Yeah, Gilligan's Island. It's a lark, It's good stuff, It's pretty old and cheesy, but I feel like it's really stood up quite well. It's still quite funny. Right. It's still quite endearing.
Yeah.
It might also, though, just be that I have fond memories of watching it before going to school when I was like 13 because it was on at the right time in the morning, So I'd start the day with a bit of some porridge and some Wheat Bix and some Gilligan's Island. So yeah, Gilligan's Island.
Oh, okay. I would throw Smallville in there.
Smallville. Guy and our old flatmates Nick and Rogan, they all loved it. They loved Smallville, this dumb show about Superman, but when he was a pimply faced school kid.
When he was an incredibly handsome,
muscly 25-year-old school kid.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of problems with Smallville. One, they didn't really have the budget to do Superman's powers. Two, they kind of did sort of Monster of the Week. So basically, Clark runs into a guy at high school who's been affected by the meteor shower, who has some special powers, which means that Clark can't just completely destroy him in 1 second. And then he kind of defeats him. It's all covered up. Everyone forgets. We move on to the next episode. And then the on-again, fucking off-again bullshit with Lana Lang, which was just like, oh, they're going to get together. Nah, Clark is afraid because he's Superman. He doesn't want to put her in jeopardy, despite putting her in jeopardy every single episode of every single season.
Also,
fighting these monsters.
Also, we know they're not going to hook up, or they're not going to end up together because he's got to get with fucking April O'Neil or whatever that bloody whatever.
It's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
What's her name?
Lois Lane.
Yeah. So we know he's going to end up with her eventually. So
yeah. Well, also they had Lex Luthor was his best mate.
Yeah.
But then trying to uncover Clark's secret.
Yeah. That's a slab. That's Guy's phone.
That's
going
my
off.
phone, which I can't answer at the moment because we're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
This fucking shit's important, y'all.
Fucking amateur.
But yeah, and it was like, I'm gonna find out these secrets about you, Clark. You're hiding something from me, and Clark's like, I'm not hiding anything from you. See, the fact I'm Superman.
Yeah. Well, see, there's a greater issue with Superman. It's this whole Monster of the Week thing.
Too many powers.
He's invincible. The guy's invincible. You know that every single storyline has to do with kryptonite because it's his only weakness.
Yep.
So every single story, every single bad guy has to have access to kryptonite basically in some way or another. Yep. So, how have they managed to drag that storyline out for 40 years or something? I don't know. He's invincible except for kryptonite. It's always going to be kryptonite.
That's the thing. Never give someone too many powers. They gave Superman everything.
Yeah.
They gave him literally every single power. So like all these other superheroes just have one thing. He has fucking everything. He's got fucking flying, vulnerability, laser eyes, make you forget eyes,
turn time back.
He really had that, or they just did that in the movies.
He can literally spin around the Earth backwards until
I'm pretty
time
sure
turns
just
backwards.
Added that into the movie,
which also, from a physics point of view, not what would happen if you spun the Earth the other way.
Yeah.
Not what would happen. Time wouldn't go backwards.
So Smallville for me. Also, just throw in Sailor Moon.
Right, yeah, but that's just because those sexy little skirts they were wearing.
Off to, the Sailor Scouts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like me with Pokemon.
Pikachu.
Yeah.
Now, I know people have been waiting, and they've probably been waiting the whole time for this, but now it's time for everyone's favourite segment, which is... Tweet it.
I just have to pour a drink. I'm just pouring a drink to survive this.
Pouring another drink? A third drink of Sambuca?
No, second drink of Sambuca and one Jim Beam.
Oh, right, okay. So this one's from Rob Delaney. Our team has just recovered the black box, and it would seem that Harrison Ford's earring did indeed confuse the compass and other controls. Harrison Ford crashed his plane.
Right.
You know about that?
Yeah, he crashed his plane.
Yeah. And he has an earring.
Harrison Ford has an earring. Is that big news, is it?
Well, yeah, because he's 72.
Right.
And he has one earring in his...
Is this a new thing, or has he had it for ages?
He's had it since, I think he turned 55 or something like that.
And got his ear pierced.
Yeah.
Oh, good for him.
It's kind of weird, but...
Yeah, good for him.
Thought it was funny.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole crashing a plane thing...
Yeah.
Quite sort of,
scary?
I don't know. Well, it's just kind of also ironic, like you see him in Indiana Jones with Sean Connery in the back, and they're crashing planes and shooting the tail. Yeah, exactly. It's easy to imagine that. Hey, maybe that's what happened.
Well, there's a quote where there's like, how to land this thing, and he's like, fly, yes, land, no.
Yeah. See, that's the meme we should have made.
Well, I think someone has.
I'm sure they have.
Metal Gear Solid. This is from @GPeasy.
Who?
Metal Gear Solid, The Phantom Pain. Just sounds like Snake's got arthritis in this one. It's true, right?
It does. Or he's had his hand chopped off and he's feeling the phantom itch.
Here we go. What else we got?
What else have we got?
This is from Jim O'Rear. You're in your 20s. You don't have haters. You have adults that think you're annoying.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's not bad. That's very true. You know what, dear listener? I'm not kidding when I say I really dislike this segment. Please continue.
This is from Mark Hobbs. Stop paying for dating services. For free, I will hook you up with one of my batshit crazy friends who'll make you lose all hope. This is from Wise Guy Pictures. Had a dope weekend binge watching Netflix, binge drinking beer, and binge avoiding my crippling addiction issues.
That's good. Relatable.
Simon Ward. This one's from Simon Ward, our friend Simon Ward. Seriously though, don't ever mix up Tinder and Uber. Hashtag weekend lessons. This is from Jason L. Voorhees. Do you know who that is?
Well, it's Jason Voorhees is the guy from a character from a horror film.
Yeah. Holy shit, man. I'm having a killer weekend. Literally. Hashtag classic me.
Oh,
hold on. This is from Adam McKay. Opinions aren't like assholes at all. Listen to an opinion, then get close to an asshole. The differences are dramatic.
It's true.
What else? Here we go. There's another one. This is from Ben Schwartz. Dimming the lights was the original Instagram filter.
Tweeter.
This is from Dan Klein. I hate when people post personal or political crap on Facebook. Why should I have to look at that while I'm trying to jerk off?
Yeah. I'm on board with Facebook jerk-off jokes. I wrote a rap about jerking off on Facebook.
This one's from Kanye West. Fame is often looked down upon in the design world, so it's actually been something I had to overcome.
He's such a cock, man. He's honestly such a dickhead. Like, he really thinks that we like his designs. Like, he's such a cockbag. I don't understand.
That was a classic Kanye.
That is a classic Kanye.
Like, classic egotistical, insane Kanye tweet. Now, this is from Harris Whittles, who's a comedian who recently passed away.
Well, how did he send that tweet?
This is
tweeting from beyond the grave.
Yes, well, obviously his Twitter still remains.
Right, well, who's running it?
It just hasn't been closed yet.
Right.
But he was a prolific tweeter. Mm-hmm. So this is a tribute to him. It's cool when actors laughingly talk about their old shitty jobs that many, many people currently have.
Yeah, it's true. All right, I think that's enough, tweeter. That's enough, man. That's enough. Save some for next week.
Okay. So
just play that outro.
Wrap it all up with the outro.
Thank God.
Tweeter.
Jesus. That's people just know to sign out. Sign out when they hear that.
Sign on.
All right. Well, so thank you very much for listening. Make sure that you give us your topics for next week. Yep. Any topics or questions, we will have an uninformed opinion and we will not be afraid to share it. So please give them to us in the Facebook page, Pigville Productions, or add me, Harley Neville, or add Guy's Twitter, @GPZ. Or pigvilleproductions@hotmail.com. So you've got a wealth of options there. Send us through your stuff and we will turn it into content. So thank you very much for listening.
Good night.